I never did really care much about Pewdiepie. I first became aware of him through the various hype surrounding him, so I watched one of his videos and decided that I had no interest in him whatsoever. So you can imagine my surprise when I noticed that Sargon of Akkad was talking about him being targeted by the media and calling him a Nazi. I watched the video, saw what Sargon had to say, and one line in particular that Sargon said stuck out to me. That line was that Pewdiepie has been red-pilled hard by the media as a result of everything that's been happening to him, given that not only has his image and character been attacked, but that he has also been affected financially, what with Disney dropping him. As bad as all this is, there is one silver lining in all of this. The left has inadvertently just woken someone up that, until a short while ago, probably didn't care about them one way or the other. I don't know a lot about Pewdiepie, but going out on a limb here, I am guessing that he has no interest as far as politics are concerned. Now, being awakened to what the left is doing, hopefully he'll be more proactive when it comes to the left doing this to other people, and this is the point I am getting at here. The left, by attacking anyone and everyone for minor slights and insignificant reasons, is actually doing all they can to wake people up to how corrupt they are, and while this is a terrible thing for those individuals affected, it is a good thing as far as the benefit of the nation is concerned. What we need to do is go and attack the left before they become so powerful that they can no longer be rooted out. We have already seen this with Hitler, someone who, after achieving power, only around 10% of the German population actually supported him. However, the remaining 90% were just ignored or intimidated into silence, so their viewpoint didn't really matter. We are already seeing this with the left, not only in college campuses like Princeton where male and female genders were banned so as to not offend the transgendered people now, but also in the feminist and Black Lives Matter groups, two organizations that seem to be nothing more than what the KKK is to black people, but instead being applied to men and whites. But of course, it's entirely excusable for the left to do this because whites and men, and especially white straight men, have all the privilege in society, so of course it is okay to attack, demean, and outright vilify them as a group because those black lesbians just got it so bad, don't you know? It is apparent that the left is an organization that is built upon dividing people into groups and then playing them against one another, where one is the innocent victim and the other is the abusive oppressor. This kind of black and white thinking is insane, and I dare you to apply this logic to other groups by accusing all blacks of being nothing more than career criminals and all Muslims as being nothing more than a bunch of terrorists who are all members of a death cult. The mainstream media, being nothing more than propaganda machines for the left, would burn you alive on the 6 o'clock news. Meanwhile, turning a blind eye to Black Lives Matter, who have people amongst their group as actually believing that whites should give up their jobs, homes, and essentially anything else they might own and give it all to black people. Because black people have got it so bad since black people are being killed in such record numbers for their demographic. Never mind, of course, that the number one killer of black people is other black people. And as far as cops shooting black people goes, that is usually done while the black person is firing at them in an attempt to resist arrest. So the entire idea that a cop is willing to defend his life and the life of fellow officers is never going to occur to these people. And even goes and further proves that it's all white people's fault. And yes, even if the people who went and killed black people were black themselves, white people are still going to be the only group getting blamed for it because that is how prejudice works. Fuck reasons, we don't care. We got an axe to grind and we're going to stick to that narrative even if we have to make stuff up and blatantly ignore the truth. I'm tired of seeing this kind of hypocrisy happening. And the sad thing of it is only happening because people are afraid to be called mean and terrible names. Personally, if I tell someone I am not interested in sleeping with men, and they go and call me a homophobe and a racist, that actually tends to bring up several questions in my mind. The first question I have for them is how in the world do they get raised out of me not wanting to sleep with the same sex? And two, how is me having a preference or not having a preference in any way related to homophobia? Does this mean if a gay man does not want to have sex with a woman, does that mean he is heterophobic? Or, using feminist ideology now, does that mean that he is just a misogynist who hates women so badly that he would rather have sex with men in an attempt to spite them? The reason I am asking these questions is because these attacks that are being thrown against people usually have nothing to do with reality. They are just ways to intimidate someone into silence, and worse yet, by overusing them so much at every given opportunity available, they have actually devalued the use of the words as they once were. When you say I am a racist, does this mean that I would be in full support of tying a nigger to a cross, dumping gasoline on them, and then setting the fucker on fire? Or does it mean that I like to go and eat Chinese food despite being white? Which of the two is it now, when you go and say that I am racist? And also, an even better question to ask. Shouldn't the fact that one is just about as bad as the other in your deluded mind enough to tip you off that you are in no position to criticize anyone in terms of how they act and behave? Your touch with reality is tenuous at best, and frankly, I do not need the mentally ill or the psychologically insane to go and lecture me on how to act and behave. I am sick and tired of people giving in to bullies just because the bullies are going to call them mean names if they don't capitulate to their wants and demands. We have already seen firsthand the destruction it has caused to the U.S., not just as an adhesive whole now, but also in terms of one's personal freedom and their right to free speech. By going out of their way and attacking anyone just to go and virtue signal that they are the good guys, or to go and keep the entire narrative running that the U.S. is an oppressive place to live, the left is just showing the world how out of touch with reality they are, and also how much of a control freak they are. The left wants to control what everyone can say, think, and do. The fact that they are using gays, women, and minorities as a shield at best, or a smokescreen at worst, should be tipping everyone off that we are headed into a fascist regime where the ones who go and toe the party line and has an exceptionally thin skin and are devoid of any original thought that hasn't been parroted back to them in their echo chamber ad nauseum are going to be the only ones who will rise to the top. The left, going out of their way to attack everyone, is inadvertently doing the opposition a favor. By waking up the normal people, the people who usually would not be involved in this under normal circumstances. You remember, those days where people said sticks and stones may break my bones but words will never hurt me, and didn't expect Big Daddy government to attend to their every little boo-boo, and in fact were actually expected to take care of themselves and fight their own damn battles and rise to the top under their own willpower. Well, guess what? Those days are gone, thanks to the left wanting to play nanny by creating an entire victim class where anyone who is not a victim must as a result be the evil villain. If not by action, then by consequence of birth, by being born into said group. Because free will, merit, and all those other good things are all microaggressions now. Meaning, one would be forced to assume that the standards in place are so high that only the people that are perfect in every single way imaginable, both mentally and physically, can be expected to achieve them. I am, of course, talking about those godlike white straight males, because women, gays, and minorities are all just lesser people now. That may not be what the left intended. However, in reality, by saying that said groups of people cannot achieve basic standards that the dominant group are following and achieving, and therefore should have specialized standards in place that are lower so that other lesser qualified people, red, blacks, and women, can have a chance at success even though they are vastly underqualified for the positions they are going to be holding. Not only that, but there should also be a quota in place, because naturally being inferior now, there is no way they can be expected to compete if better qualified candidates aren't actively being discriminated against. That is, the white straight males. Harsh as it may be what I just said, I seriously fail to see how outside of brainwashing and indoctrination, one can be expected to come to any other conclusion that these groups that are supposedly being marginalized aren't somehow lesser or even outright inferior to the dominant group. But of course, I am using logic and reason, two things that black supremacists and women supremacists, feminism essentially, have gone on to say that are actual tools of the white man, and as a result, shouldn't be trusted. If you need any better proof of what I just said, try looking up how science and math is both racist and sexist against blacks and women, and how science, being the product of white men, needs to be redone from the ground up from a black perspective, because white science cannot explain how voodoo can cause lightning to strike someone, all of course before someone pulls up their iPad, an invention by white men, and going on as if they are not some kind of bigot or hypocrite. People, normal people, who don't care about such things I just talked about and are only interested in living their daily lives with few or any complications along the way, are slowly beginning to wake up and realize that they could easily be the next person that is tarred and feathered. The average person could care less about what someone was born as, what their identity is, or who they like to fuck or don't want to fuck. They just want to live an easy, peaceful life where people get along and don't worry about minute detail that in the long scheme of things really don't matter anyway. The left, unfortunately, has other plans, what with the personalist political agenda, and therefore wants to create trouble where none previously existed. The idea of a tranquil environment is the exact opposite of what the left wants, because in such an environment there is no one to demonize and no one to white knight for, and thus no political advantage for the left to remain in power. So naturally it is in the left's own interest to find, or failing that, outright create problems where none previously existed. The average U.S. citizen is slowly but surely starting to wake up. And once they realize how they're being used and manipulated, that is when it will all come crashing down for the left. The left has gotten rid of their outer veneer. What with talking about getting along and working together and how there is no way the entire election could possibly be rigged, despite the fact that there have been people on camera saying they have been actually paid to go and vote for Hillary, and also said how they are part of this group and all that actively goes and commits voter fraud. Well, guess what? The left, they have basically just ended up showing their true colors. Because the moment their chosen candidate of choice did not win the election, just like a spoiled child or a monkey throwing its own feces, they started to insist that the entire democratic process should be overhauled and that the election was rigged in Trump's favor. The sad part of it is, even before the election, what about the Trump supporters? Remember them? The entire media went and described anyone who was fighting a Trump supporter as being a protester. And I'm like, look, a protester is not somebody who walks up to you and then proceeds to wail on you because your opinion is different than theirs. The kind of person who does that is usually called a terrorist! Think about it. You're using fear and intimidation for political ends. What the hell do you think the definition of a terrorist is? In fact, given when a fight actually broke out when a gay man who was not only a Republican but also supported Trump, a gay man by the name of Milo Yiannopoulos, tried to give a speech at a university, the people that came to hear him were physically attacked by people supporting leftist propaganda, including one woman who wore a parody hat that said, "Make veganism great again." And of course, this doesn't take into account the left calling anyone they attack a Nazi, even going on and saying, hey, it's okay to punch a Nazi, as a way to justify their terroristic acts. Acts that, again, as labeled by the quote-unquote anti-fake news media, were only labeled as forms of protest. The left has overplayed their hand. There is no other way to look at it. They have gone on with the idea that they can do whatever they want, and everyone will bend over backwards and support what they're doing. This has gone on for so long, now that there is pushback, they are starting to realize that people are no longer willing to be bullied, and the left just cannot take it anymore. So, like any spoiled child now, they are doubling down. They are going twice as hard with their agenda, the very thing that turned people against them in the first place, and as a result of this, they are doing the opposition a favor. The worse they act, the more people they wake up. And the more people they wake up, the more they hasten their own demise. It is sad that change must come at such a high cost to the individual person. However, change must happen, because the alternative is far worse than just a few people having a ruined reputation and no longer being allowed to go and support themselves in their chosen occupation. We are talking about the future of a country here. Sad to say, there will be casualties, but these casualties are a strict necessity. There is no way to go and do this without suffering loss. This is why people being attacked and then realizing, hey, the left is out of their mind. They are not in touch with reality, and all they become is the very monsters they go and purport as fighting. You want to go and accuse people who disagree with you as being Nazis, and yet you will use the exact same tactics that a Nazi would use. I really don't know what to tell you. If what I just said will not change their mind, nothing will. The left has to be stopped. There is no other way to look at it.